Greetings, folks. I decided to break this into columns to make it easier to read. And what I'll do is so that you can see it a bit easier, I'll go like that for a moment. Zeta and her computer leave Kappatoo's dome just before Simon returns from the rehearsal for Ultramatch. Kappatoo arrives back in his dome and advises that first and foremost, they have to get Lucy back. Unhappy with the way the computer is still responding, Kappatoo threatens to scrap it for a new one. Just then, a call comes through from Zeta, saying she does not want Lucy, but him. She advises that he beams over to her dome right away. Kappatoo beams over to Zeta's dome and Lucy is returned. Kappatoo's computer follows, telling Simon he may be able to negotiate something. But when he arrives, his loyalty to Zeta is confirmed. Kappatoo's computer asks to look at the time antiques that Zeta has collected. While she shows them off, Kappatoo's computer asks her how she manages to time travel so often and not get caught. She openly shows I got a bit of an echo. She openly shows the computer an antique time travel device, although it's put am, and explains that she never uses the same method twice in a row. That's what she said. The computer returns to Kappatoo's dome, now pretending to be loyal to be Kappatoo, and advises Simon he will have to take Kappatoo's place on Ultramatch. Simon, the computer, and Lucy watch from the future, and the computer advises he will send Lucy back to help Steve, and Simon must get to Ultramatch. Simon is about to go on Ultramatch when Kappatoo's computer arrives and gives him an earpiece so that it can advise him of the answers to the questions. While Kappatoo's computer is answering the questions correctly, Zeta advises Sigma 6 and her computer to send Kappatoo onto the stage at precisely the right moment. Simon loses communication with the computer and cannot answer the next set of questions because he loses the earpiece. Another contestant draws level with him, and the final question he manages to answer by fluke. It's not really a fluke because he'd heard all of that, a running joke about a flank from Alpha Centauri. Because Lucy had kept saying to him, no, he's a flank from Alpha Centauri. Although, hang on a minute, she said that to Kappatoo rather than to Simon. But wait a minute. Yeah, okay. Again, okay. Right. As the sponsor of winning the match, as the sponsor of Ultramatch, Zeta arrives for, because it's Zeta Core, arrives for what people believe is the prize presentation of a trip to Amazonia. But instead, she has Kappatoo beamed onto the stage and Kappatoo's computer give evidence that Kappatoo time traveled illegally to have Simon replace him on both the Hypergrid and Ultramatch. Kappatoo and Steve search the destroyed caravan for the time belt and locate it. Before Kappatoo leaves, he gives Steve his wristband. Hang on a minute. I can't remember now. Why did Kappatoo go back into the past? What did he need Simon for in the future? Yes, we're having problems and something happening with the timeline, I think. Kappatoo and Steve search the destroyed caravan for the time belt and locate it. Before Kappatoo leaves, he gives Steve his wristband so he can release Brian, Hazel, Sharon, and Melonie. Steve unfreezes everybody, and as Kappatoo was there when they were frozen, he is not what they all believe. He is not what they all believe. Steve unfreezes everybody, And as Kappatoo was there when they were frozen, he is not what they all believe, having vanished into thin air. Okay. Brian refuses to believe that Simon did not do exactly that. Then suddenly spots the video camera and realizes it will have recorded everything. Because it was recorded. Brian watches the recording and keeps Kappatoo freeze time. Watches the recording and sees Kappatoo freeze time and then beam him and Steve out of the kitchen. Brian refuses to believe Steve's claim that this is all an elaborate joke, even when Lucy arrives back claiming she has been swimming, which she was wet. Well, add to it. He goes off to make a telephone call for some advice. Lucy and Steve are playing chess and thinking of a way of trying to stop Brian from telling people about what he saw. Not able to think of anything, they both agree to wait. And of course, with that chess thing of like not being able to see one move ahead, which is a bit of a cliche, it must drive chess players up the wall momentarily, or irk them anyway. While Brian is feeding the cows, the one that Kappatoo made starts talking to him because Brian was talking to himself. Brian comes back and speaks to everybody, informing them that after all the events he has witnessed, he's going to call the newspapers. Right then. Oh, yes. Over to you, Jeff.
I'm so glad you asked. You sounded as confused as me this time. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't understand why. I mean, some of this I'm sure will pay off in the final episode, but I didn't know why. You asked about why Kappatoo needed to be back in the past. I didn't understand why they needed to why they needed to have him at the Ultra match, but that was sort of explained that they wanted to make this big presentation about it or whatever instead of just turning him over to the police. They got to be over dramatic. So my suspicion is that probably the computer is really going to double cross the villains because he was observing the time travel like methods, and then so he can then turn her back over to the police for doing that or whatever. So that's what I'm guessing, but of course I've never seen it, so I don't know. But I didn't quite get what you said about the chess match. Because I don't know why that was significant, really, in any way. But
no, I was just saying that's an example of they frequently have people play chess, and where they'll move one piece and they'll say checkmate, whereas the other people can see one or two moves ahead, and so if it was more realistic, they might say check in 4 moves or something like that.
You mean that it's not really checkmate?
No, I mean that they should be able to see one move ahead. I mean, because like he couldn't see like that in one move it would be check. I mean, yes, his mind was completely off it. But I'm just saying, you get a lot of that. You get that in so much where they play a game where someone makes one move and it beats the other person as if the other person couldn't see that just one move.
Well, I mean, a lot of people suck at chess, Ben.
Yeah, fair enough.
Including me. I mean, I played it many times, but it doesn't mean I'm good at it.
Okay. That's fair enough. I mean, they're both that's fair enough.
And as you said, they're quite distracted by other things going on. So
yeah,
it's a wonder that Steve can keep up with anything. I think when they first introduced him, he was presented as a little bit more of a dim bulb, and then he's had to get smarter as the show's gone on in order to pull off a lot of the things he's managed to do.
Steve,
yeah.
Yeah. As for I mean, I've not been able to check whether it was done on a location or in a studio. I think it was done in a studio because of the sound of it. The camera's quite close in. It's not like you can like take a wall out or anything. There seems to be 4 walls to it because we see all the walls, but it just sounds like it's in a kind of a small, because it's got that kind of echo on it that you get in a location. So I think that those interior scenes on Earth were shot on location. What do you think based on the sound? Because you've got good ears.
I don't know, but I don't. I thought of one of the other things I didn't understand is why Brian wanted to call in newspapers. That seems to somewhat betray you're portraying him as an NF type. Also, because it just doesn't seem like that would have been the response to all that stuff happening.
Well,
because other than trying to somehow like become famous or profit off it in some way, I don't know why he would want to get newspapers involved.
Well, I think the writing of him is a little bit inconsistent in that, like, we're told that he was this guy who made a lot of money in the city in finance and then retired to the country. So you might think, okay, ENTP kind of stuff. And then we get all the kind of NF-ish interests. Like the ENTP, like getting a quick book kind of thing. And so he goes back and forth. He's not particularly written with a lot of... I think the actor's okay. It's just that he could have been written in a bit more depth. And what lines he had, he delivered well. Did Melonie actually say anything this episode? I can't remember.
If she did, it was barely anything.
Yeah.
I like the future girls' hairstyles in the audience. And the behind the scenes silver-faced people. I'm not sure who they were supposed to be.
I thought I heard something. I thought I heard some amusement.
Yeah, well, I laughed at the what they said about it in the script. And then, but anyway, I was like, well, that's an interesting look. Are they supposed to be like aliens, or they're just supposed to be humans who just have that's their fashion sense, includes covering their whole skin with silver makeup?
Yeah, I assume there's some sort of droids.
Oh, yeah, I guess it could be. The other thing was the masterclass computer can't lie at a public gathering. I was like, well, that's convenient. It's another one of those things just sort of like put in there at the last second. Oh, we'll have to say the computer can't lie in a public gathering. Because they could have just brought back, I'm pretty sure in the first time around, they had like whatever the truth detector they put on Simon, and they could have just done something like that again. So it seemed like a sort of unnecessary cheesiness on that part. But.
Yeah, I mean, definitely amusing, these costumes. Yeah. Yeah, so Brian, if I was to type Brian, some kind of any dom. That's it.
It's possible, though. In this episode, he definitely didn't seem well. Okay, I'm not going to paint the brush that that N types. Sometimes they get the stereotype that they can't be focused. That they're always just like scatterbrained or whatever. And I'm not trying to perpetuate that stereotype. But in this episode, he definitely seemed he was like perturbed about what was going on, but he was very calm about it. He was very focused and calm. So it didn't seem like it was something where he was having like, he wasn't doing like the, Doc Brown, Mad Professor type thing. And he also wasn't like very animated about anything. He also hasn't spent very much time at all, like really talking about anything conceptual. So that's the kind of thing. It's like if they were trying to do, a more intuitive character, you would think that they would at least have had him talking about why he cares about any of aliens or anything about that. And it's sort of like at the very beginning when he was introduced, they maybe slightly touched on that, and then they just kind of abandoned it. So ever since then, he's been very factual.
Yeah, and as for, that was a pretty high performance level in terms of like the bigness of his performance in terms of Doc Brown. in Back to the Future. So I mean, I know a lot of NE DOMs can be like big like that, but that was a big performance.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that everybody is always over the top like that, but I mean, in a situation like this, if somebody feels like they've made this big discovery, something that's going to change the world or something, why he's going to call newspapers, like, because he's trying to make, I've made this brilliant discovery of this amazing thing. He just seems so unenthusiastic.
Well, I would say he seems in shock.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, that may be what he's trying to portray, but if that was the case, then it seemed like he wouldn't be as focused on alerting the media. So that's the part that just seems inconsistent to me.
Yeah, it's not like, I see what you mean. It is not like, it's like the stuff for the sake of the plot.
Yeah, because I think, to use another probably NTP character, I don't know if you ever watched the show My Secret Identity. It was a Canadian show, but broadcast in America too. And I'm momentarily going blank on the actor's name, but the main character, or the professor guy in that show, has several times where he's working on various invention things, and so he's trying to, he goes to like conventions or stuff like that to like show them certain things that he's discovered. But when he's actually making the discovery itself, he doesn't go quite full Doc Brown, but he still is like excited about it, and he's like, if I connect this and this and this, this will, it's like there's more, more reaction, and it's like the purpose of when he was actually contacting someone in the scientific community, he's trying to like, there's probably a little bit of showing off for them, but he's also trying to like establish some sort of new scientific thing, as opposed to it being like, well, let me call the media about this. So I'm not sure exactly what the purpose of that would be, other than just notoriety for discovering it.
Yeah, I mean, the ENT, you can get that kind of ENTP that's in finance, and like Peter Schiff, for example, I think he's ENTP. I mean, I listened to him since 2009, and so you can have the entrepreneurial kind of ENTP where it's spotting the opportunity to make money, and like I said, I mean, the concept in the media, it's consistent with the bit right at the beginning when we're told, we made a load of money in the city, financial district like Wall Street, and he retired to the country. So it's consistent with that. But then when we get there, and then he's like NFE and talking about ley lines and stuff. So yeah, it's just not written with a lot of depth, and the wife has even less depth. It's written in even less. Yeah. She's got the least depth of the lot.
Well, that's the thing when you have a show with not a lot of episodes and not very long per episode, is that you don't have time to do a ton of character development, but you can still do it if you care about that for the particular characters. But obviously, he really is there mainly to exist as a somebody to further the plot, as opposed to any kind of actual examination of his character. So
yeah, it's like they're more roles than characters. It's like the role, the
right.
Just fulfilling a role in the story rather than like following a character. And the same with Steve as well. I mean, Steve could have been developed a bit more.
Yeah, I think he's all right in how he is, in the sense that he's a little bit more. I feel like I'm more able to understand his motivations than Brian.
And at least they had that bit where, to help the audience along, where he had a little bit of a soliloquy talking to himself about what is the effect of this going to be when they find out.
Yeah, I laugh every time the cow talks. So
I mean, that might be the best performance in the whole show.
The consistent comedy element. Somebody figured out talking cows are funny, and let's just go to that when we need something.
The thing is, Jeff, they may have been influenced by some adverts at the time where they had talking cows because they may have had that with like advert for kinds of butter in the
You're talking
80s.
about move over butter.
Yeah, something like that in the 80s, because I do remember talking like cows and stuff, and they would do it in that kind of Devon, and they might even have advertised like Devon butter or something like that.
Ironically, of course, the cows became the Chick-fil-A representatives later on, but they don't actually talk. They just have signs with writing that with bad spelling.
Okay. So I thought it was interesting in there is that, and it sort of shows its northeastern roots, is that these two, the two that talked, it's unusual on British television to hear a Geordie accent. Those two, did I?
Obviously, I have no idea what that means and couldn't tell any difference in their accents. But
well, these two, these two both had the same accent.
Okay,
and it's
I have to take your word for it.
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say that they definitely left themselves open to the sexism criticisms with the game show, because it was like the girl doesn't know anything. She doesn't even answer any of the questions.
Well, there was one, yeah. Well, it's all about, yeah. What have we got here? So I have something about. There weren't as many amusing moments in this. I was amused by. I thought like with what little he had, that actor was good that plays Uncle Brian.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with his acting. I just think the writing of his character, there's not a lot to it. So, they don't really establish his motivations very well.
So apparently, this was Rudalenska was best known in the United States for this 1979 advert, and
I was a little young then, so
yes,
I don't remember that.
And then you got there's her character, mate.
Don't remember that either. Though I did see that story, like I said, but I don't specifically remember her.
And then there's a bit there about her early life. I'll leave that for the audience. You want to take that in? What else? Yeah. What I can say about this episode is that there wasn't much noteworthy in it. Like, that's all I wrote on it.
Well, one thing, obviously, that as we've talked about Doctor Who before, is that, when they wrote the Doctor Who stories, overwhelming majority of them are like 4 episodes long. And so, there's some that are longer than that, obviously, but and even a few shorter, but most of them are 4 or sometimes 6, somewhere in there, usually 4 or 6. And so you have this thing in Doctor Who fandom where they talk about the 3rd episode or the 5th episode of a 6-parter, where it's the second to last one. So it's like everything is about setting up the finale. And in some cases, they do a really good job of that, and that they make it the most suspenseful episode of all of them, where you're like, how are they possibly going to tie up all these things in one final episode? In other stories, they actually do it. They do too much in the second to last episode, where the final episode ends up being anticlimactic because it's like all of the excitement happened before that. So it kind of depends. But I thought this episode, I don't know about the finale because I've never seen it, so I don't know how well everything's paid off in the end. But I thought, even if I don't understand the reasons why everything is set up the way it is, I thought they did a good job of using this episode to set up all these things sort of in place for a grand finale. Kind of what is the reporter who comes going to see, or what's going to happen, what's the computer going to say. It's all these different things that are factors of how is it going to all wrap up. Now, obviously, some of it they could be pretty easily cop out because they've already established they can do this, memory erasing thing or whatever before, though it doesn't seem to have worked all that well, at least not permanently. But they can obviously somehow do that on the people, back in the 90s, as far as them remembering this taking place. Though obviously they also could leave it not completely that way if they were trying to set up doing, another season at some point. So anyway, so I felt like it definitely continued it was a good pace. Wasn't like it dragged at any point, and when the episode ended, it was definitely a hanger. So all that was well done.
I think the way I watched it, I watched it last night. I wanted to get it. I shouldn't have watched it last night. I should have watched it this morning. And so if I would have maybe written more things down. It seems, in comparison with the first series, it seems this is more heavily serialized, this second season. And so maybe for a casual audience, it may have been more difficult for them to follow and get into it. But that's always the balance, isn't it?
What do you mean by heavily serialized?
Well, where in the first series, quite a lot of the episodes were sort of self-contained, sort of set pieces, like with the one with the school and Greg in the election. Whereas this, it seems like 7 parts of one story. So
I don't know. I felt like the first season was like that too, but maybe it's just because I've seen so many really self-contained, episodic shows that to me, just the fact that they had continuing elements that really that it never felt like the narrative broke. There was, I guess, there was one episode that sort of seemed like it was almost a recap of what had happened so far. And that one was a little bit different, but overall, I thought each episode did continue the story in some capacity. So.
Yeah, I think that it's getting that balance right between, in my opinion, about not necessarily wanting to have something that's really serialized in that era, but I think the best compromise in that era it would be to have self-contained episodes, but also have a continuing element. And whereas now, because the technology, the way we experience these stories affects things so much, where people can watch something from beginning to end, not miss an episode, rewind bits, so you can tell a more complex story over multiple episodes. Whereas you've got a casual audience, especially when it's aimed at young teenagers, I suppose, where you can't get as, because that was always what was the, and I go back to, that was always the thing with Babylon 5. It had low ratings, but it was very highly rated by those people that watched it, and the casual audience could not get into Babylon 5 because of these long stories. But then what happened is the people that were into it were really into it enough to buy the DVDs. And then the DVDs sold really well. And then also with seasons being released on box sets and people buying box sets and stuff, then they started to do more seasons as box sets and having that continuous element.
Well, I think a show like this, which does have plenty of comedy and is shorter episodes and fast-paced, I think the potential would be that if they continued it, more people probably would be able to get into it, just because it doesn't really take that long to figure out what's going on, and right. you can kind of be interested in the sort of episode to episode thrills that occur, regardless of whether you watch all the previous ones.
Yeah,
still.
Yeah, and that.
I've got to get going, but I'll give this one a 7.
Right, I will also give it a 7.
All right. So join us next week for the exciting finale. Time something or other.
And I would say, you know what it's called, folks? I think it is called Home Time.
Home time. Okay. So
Right.
everyone finally goes home. Maybe.
All right then, folks. I'm going to end the broadcast. 7